Hello and welcome. We're going to call to order the Budget Committee meeting for the Newberg Dundee Public Schools on May 5th. Hello and welcome. So we do have two Budget Committee members who are online joining us. We've got Dawn Paulson and Megan Rogers-Sarnicki. All right, so public comment. Okay, so we're going to start off with public comment. We do have a submission from Derek Duff.
Yeah. We'll start with 3 and see where we go from there.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, no, 30, Jeremy, 30. Just kidding. All right, members of board, superintendent, and fellow community members, my name is Derek Duff. I'm speaking to you tonight as someone whose commitment to the youth community runs deep, whether that's through the time serving on the Finance Advisory Committee, as a board member and coach for Newberg Youth Football, or out on the field coaching the Newberg Red Hulk Smash Tigers in T-ball. Above all, I'm a parent invested in the long-term success of our schools. I currently have 3 children in the district, one at Newberg High School, one at Chehalem Valley Middle School, and one who will be starting kindergarten at Crater Elementary next year. Because I want to see a thriving environment for all of them and for every child in the district, I'm here to voice my support of Measure 36-239, and I'll be voting yes on the measure. I want to be clear about what this levy represents. This is not an additional measure bringing a wave of new expense to our district. Rather, it's a measure to pause the deep structural pain that's been felt across our entire community if it fails. As a community, we desperately need to turn down the volume of the highly partisan voices that have dominated our discourse. The turmoil we are experiencing began back in June of 2020 with the anti-racism resolution, and since then, the pendulum has swung wildly between extremes. We've spent years distracted by political attacks instead of focusing on education. As we approach the 6-year mark of this tension, our district is still operating in a state of crisis. Passing the levy provides us a crucial opportunity to step out of the crossfire and rebuild the solid foundation. To echo what Director Byerly stated in a prior board meeting, passing this levy isn't an either-or proposition, it must be an and proposition. To the community members who think that passing this levy means nothing changes and we continue to operate as is, this simply cannot be reality. Change is coming and it's entirely necessary. What this levy provides is an extended timeline needed to methodically and intentionally think about the changes rather than continue to act in a perpetual state of emergency. This ensures we're sustainable when this 5-year levy concludes. Following through on these structural changes will be difficult. It means having hard conversations about realities like potential closures of Ewing Young Elementary and asking whether we continue to fund programs like dual language that serve only a small fraction of our student population. These changes may happen to the detriment of some personal opinions, but our responsibility is to do what's right for all students, not just to cater to the loudest voices in the room. Finally, regardless of the outcome of this measure, we must commit to designing a district that gets us to where we want to go, rather than anchoring us to where we've been. We need to ask ourselves a fundamental question. If we were going to build a school district from the ground up today, with our current buildings and assets, how would we align those for the best outcome of all students? We need to take a hard, honest look at our core value proposition to understand what drives families to come here and what keeps our children enrolled in the district. The strategy of the past must reckon with the realities of the present and the future, where we can continue to anticipate declining enrollment due to broader population shifts. The reality is that our schools have the proper size and capacity to absorb these necessary changes. Rethinking our long-term strategy may even mean making the difficult decision to divest current land and assets we originally intended for future schools we no longer need. We have a chance to stabilize, right-size, and methodically rethink our future. I urge this community to support Measure 36-239. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Derek. Are there any other public comments? Okay. All right. Next item is the budget calendar update.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming today. So the budget calendar, revised budget calendar went to the board at the last board meeting. And is that really blurry? Anyway, so it was approved by the board at the last board meeting, so that's been revised. And basically those changes are that the May 26th, which was originally the date for the hearings for the proposed budget, is now pretty much also a budget committee meeting. So if the levy passes, we're not going to do a hearing on that day. We're going to revise the approval of the budget committee to include the capacity for the local option. And then what that does is that kicks the budget hearing down to June 9th at that board meeting where the board will adopt the approved budget from the budget committee. So, and the reason that we need to make that change is for timing because the vote is on May 19th. And then we also have rules about how soon we have to post information publicly before those two things. So that's completed now, and that revised calendar is in the packet that you guys have.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so now we have the minutes from our previous meeting to approve. Everyone had a chance to look at that. Right, cool. Do I have a motion to approve?
There's just one typo on page 3. 1, 2, 3. It's the very top of the page. Claire's first name is got a little typo.
Fix that.
I'd like to say I didn't notice it, but my partner did.
Item C. Okay.
Very festive name, Noel.
All right, so we'll make that adjustment to the minutes on page 3, item C, to correct Claire's spelling of her name. All right. Anything else? Perfect. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So
Okay. Second. All right.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Fantastic.
Do we want to get the votes from the folks online or?
Yes, please.
So you probably have to call them out, Megan and.
Dawn. We have Dawn Paulson. Can we get your vote?
Aye. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
Okay,
Dawn.
thanks.
Megan, can we get your vote as well?
Yeah, aye.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so next item, we have the Q&A document.
So you guys should have this in front of you as well. And I think I wasn't going to touch on all of them, so I'll just kind of skate through them. And if you want me to spend more time on it, let me know. Or if you have additional questions you want, we can pose those. And if I have it, I'll share it. And if I don't, we'll have to come back to that one. Okay. Some of these questions were asked in the meeting, and we did respond to them in the meeting last time. But we wanted to make sure and document all those questions for the people online or that would be curious later too. So one of the questions was what changes were included in the salaries from last year's budget to this one. And the factors that were included were step increases for eligible employees, adding an additional day, following the contractual agreements for cost of living adjustments, reduced full-time equivalent staff as described in the budget message, the results of recoding some salaries to other funding. So we did a lot of shifting of activities with staff to save and repurpose some grants. And then an estimated conversion of unused benefits to salary per the collective bargaining agreements. And I apologize for all the acronyms in there, but that's a question further on too. So that's what was essentially in the salary information and the budget. And one of the questions was asking about another PERS obligation bond. And Newberg Dundee Public Schools is participating in a 3-year study with OASBO and Eco Northwest to identify if a pension obligation bond if it's a good time for it. They're going to be doing a survey of information June of 26, June of 27, and June of 28, and we'll get those results throughout. So we are participating in that study.
Nathan?
Yes.
A quick follow-up question with that. So with it being in 26, 27, and 28, when would we might see like the potential of a bond then coming? That obviously wouldn't be in those 3 years, correct? When?
It's a good question, and I don't know. I've never been in a study like this before. So I'm assuming that what'll happen is in June when we get that report, it will say whether that's a good time and give us information on what a timeline would look like. But I don't have that information just yet.
From the history of this district, we did have more than one set of bonds at the same time. It's just each time you determine if they're viable or not, and then if they're, worth the risk of the bond market and compared to the PERS rates. And that's a decision that we have, financial advisors that heavily advise us with lots of great experience to help us make that decision. Our board would make that decision. But it is possible to have concurrent, we have them now. So,
At the same time.
yeah. And it's the timing of the best interest rates compared to the PERS rates is what's most important, not what year it's in.
Right. And our current bonds expire in the 27-28 year. And so, yes. I'm trying to remember if it was July, June, or December, but they end in 2028 in that year.
Nathan?
Yes.
Is there an expense to participate in the evaluation?
Yes, it was $2,500 for us to be involved in that survey. A question came in about where a substitute budget was, and substitute budget is filtered throughout, but some of the capacity of it was put in just 1111. And so what I did is I listed where to find the substitute budget, and just to note that the total is just over $1 million that we have in the budget for substitutes. So that's in there. And then special education funding, the question was asked, what was the impact of the unweighted 7% of the ADM? So approximately 18% of our students are in the IEP category, and the state school fund pays 11% of that. And for those above that cap, there's kind of like a second weighting, and it's 11% of those over, so we get additional weights for those. So of the identified 685 IEP students, we get 455.38 second weights, which is basically a doubling of that per student funding, which creates a gap of 229.62 FTE, which at the current rate is about $2.7 million. So that was a way to quantify what that gap was there. And then we also I'll keep going. How's that, instead of getting off task here? Someone noted that on the Mountain View summary page in the proposed budget that there was a typo. It said there were only 2 licensed staff there, but there's actually 24. That would be some large class sizes if that was the case.
And it's on page 24 of the budget packet, if you're wondering.
And all these typos and revisions will be updated in the adopted book when it comes out too. So the question came up about preserving the fund balance without a contingency budget item. And there's an explanation there, but we're also going to have a chart later on that's just going to show a little rough projection of where the general fund is going to. But the explanation basically says that the capacity, and this was in the last meeting too, the capacity for the fund balance was distributed throughout the budget to give us room for activities. And yes, it does place a higher burden on our office to monitor spending and respond quickly to threats to our fund balance, which we're experiencing now as well. As with this year's budget, yeah. So maintaining an adequate fund balance in 26-27 is going to require close ongoing financial oversight and disciplined spending management throughout the year. So that was that one. How can we increase revenue, and are there more grants or lobbying? We're going to talk about grants a little bit later. Jillian's going to fill us in on some of the types of grants and uses. But we point out in this here that the most effective way for us to increase revenue is advocacy for districts across Oregon. Is there anything else you want to add there?
No, I think state superintendents met about a week and a half ago, and it became the number one topic for us over the next 3 years is really about lobbying sufficient state school funding. The issue isn't whether or not they're every year they're providing record funding. That's not the issue. Isn't about record funding. The issue is it sufficient for us to run quality programs? That's a difference. And there's lots of challenges here around the rate at which our costs are going up. It's staggering, but our cost structure doesn't change. So like whether they're going up quickly or not, that's not the issue. They are going up quickly, but we have to have revenue to meet that. So that is, I think all of us over the next year lobbying for sufficient state funding is going to be the best way for us to try and deal with some of these issues.
All right, just cruising down the list here. Can you provide a list of common acronyms? And it's linked there, but also in your proposed budget book, it's on page 233 and 34 is a list of acronyms, some common acronyms. In the Q&A, this list that's in here has been updated. So there's a few more in here. It's gonna be really tiny on here, but yeah, so that's included in the budget book as well. So a lot of those, I added local option levy. That one's new. So quite a few things that we use in EduSpeak. All right. The next question is, are there unused services at Willamette ESD or Education Service District that the district could use? And the ESD does provide services, and they have core services. And actually, I don't know what those are off the top of my head, but pretty much everything else on the menu that we get to choose, we have to pay for. So we get an allocation from them, and then we choose to spend that allocation. If we have leftover, we're able to request that in transit or actual cash that comes back to the district. Or in the case that we use it all up and we still get more services from them, they invoice us for any costs that transit doesn't, or that the local service plan dollars don't cover. So so the unused services or ones that we don't use there would have a cost if we were to access more services from them.
I think long-term, there's actually some changes that we need to make there, which is right now we're transiting those dollars and they're going into our general fund. But in the end, we should really start to identify what purpose the ESD funds have besides the services. In former districts, we kind of highlighted those as curriculum funds and utilize them to kind of buy curriculum instead of having it all pass through to the general fund. So I think long-term, we have more discussions, I think, to have about how we're utilizing the pass-through dollars at the ESD.
There's a question, is there a way to know if our student loss is due to declining population versus district popularity or perception? And we can look at trends, and we have our transfer data. But I think largely, I think we had that survey that was referenced that Leslie did at 2 years ago now. And that's kind of what we know on that.
It's both of those things. So again, I think it's also parent perception. It's also enrollment drops. I mean, all of those things are playing into kind of what's happening in our district. We're seeing that in other places too. The second thing that superintendents are very focused on right now is virtual charter enrollment. Currently they don't have to follow the same rules that public schools do. And so like there's a lot of enrollment loss right now going in other places, and that we need to do some lobbying around, okay, what are the rules that they're following? Are they the same rules that we follow, and some other pieces here. So this is going to be a big thing moving forward.
And I moved one, I'm going to skip to page 5 because it's another question about enrollment. It was, are our grades KM1 losses in line with other school districts' losses? And that was a good question. I'm like, how do I find that information? And so we have we subscribe to some an analytics tool that gives us some information. And so what I did is I have some charts from neighboring districts, and I don't want to focus on the details, but more like what the image is or what this displays. And so the orange line is the live verse in the county, our percentage of those. And the blue line is the number of kids that enroll in kindergarten that same year. And so these next few slides are really just showing the behavior of the relationship between the live verse and those enrolled kinders. And so this is Newberg's, I'm saying behavior because that's how I look at it. But, and then here's Sherwood. And I think it's interesting that their percentage of kinders enrolling has been strong, even when the bursts in the county, their percentage went down.
So
go ahead.
Go back. So blue is which?
Blue is the enrolled kinders.
So it's going down even as they had kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that dip down is probably their drama, would be my guess.
So what's the timeline on the bottom? The very first slide doesn't have it.
Oh yeah, 2010 to current to 2000
That's 2012, 2030
to 2030. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Past the blue line.
yeah.
So I'm guessing since the birth rate goes further out, they're matching up the birth rate with when they would turn 5.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's 5 years between when they're born and when they enter kindergarten. So
So that point.
30.
So that 2030 is the time they'd enter kindergarten?
Yeah.
And that orange line in 2030 is actually the 2025 birth year?
Yep. That's the way I'd read it. That's Hillsborough, different county. McMinnville. So to say that there are similarities, the only similarity I see is that around the COVID time period, there's a big dip. But it seems like every district seems to have a different behavior. Can be. And then I put it in table 2 just to show, so not to get stuck on the numbers, but my understanding is that the percentage where under this district's name is their percentage that they have of the births in that county. And then I did a change to show how that changed year to year. So just to show, try and create an apples to apples comparison. And you can see that both Canby and Newberg, both of us have quite a bit higher overall since 2019, at least, drop in enrollments there year to year. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it gives some information at least about what we have.
Can you explain 2026 year? Are we saying we had an increase?
In the percentage, in the number of kinders percentage compared to the number of live births, yes. Doesn't mean our enrollment went up, but our percentage of the live births of that year went up.
Thank you.
So again, it's an effort. Okay. Okay, we're not ready for that one. Let's go back here. Is there a plan to bring students back to the district? I think you want to.
I'll take that one. I think there's kind of two things that we've been working on. Since the summer, we've been working very actively to try and utilize our communication channels, principals' communication channels, both with a newsletter and then also with social media to show the community what's happening in our classrooms. That's why you're seeing so much more traffic on that. But there's also a part there where we have to build trust. So that's the other thing here is again, trying to build long-term stability and trust so that people know what's happening. Again, our current money issues kind of get in the way of what I think has been school-wise a pretty stable year. Like what's happening in our classrooms has been pretty solid. I think that's really, there is a communication here, there's a marketing piece, but honestly, we're staffing wise, we're cut short and we're kind of all trying to pitch in and do the communications pieces. And of all the things, it probably has gotten the least amount of focus is just how we're marketing what's happening in our classrooms. So it's definitely an area of improvement for us.
The next one is about the levy. I'm going to go ahead and there's a narrative there, but I think I'm going to skip that because we have a whole section of today that's going to be dedicated to talking about that. Shalem Online Academy was described as having a positive impact. Could you clarify what that means?
Yeah, there's 135 students and it's 2.5 FTE. So the amount of ADM revenue that's bringing in is actually more than the 2.5 FTE, which means the money on top of that is going back to the general fund and feeding it. We're working pretty hard on kind of evolving the vision of COA, both at the elementary and the secondary level. We're changing kind of the program, especially elementary wise, back towards something that we probably had earlier. And looking to, again, we're out with their calling parents. They ran an open house. We had 27 families show up to find out more about kind of where the program's going. So feel good about where we're at. We still have a lot of work to do. We're circling up secondary COA, the teachers and staff, and coming together to talk about more about what we want that experience to be. Honestly, the two teachers who are there are they've done an awesome job holding it all together because there's no administrative assistant help. They're doing a lot of the enrolling. There's a 0.5 coming out of Catalyst that helps a lot with that. But honestly, over time, we need to develop a system that's the teachers are teaching and there's other support staff who are managing the flow of paper and information. And so we have work to do to kind of get that program back. It's a critical program in not all kids need the same experience. And so it's a critical program to make sure we're meeting all kids' needs. And so I'm very excited to kind of work with staff to kind of evolve it.
Thanks. Okay, on the next page, page 5, at the top, I'm going to skip the levy one again, since that's coming up later. We went over the K and 1. The question was asked, how long will the board allow the district to create a budget that does not meet board policy requirements for general fund contingency and fund balance? I think that's a question that we will pose, that would be posed to the board. So I left that blank on purpose. So I don't think I'm going to answer that one, but that question is out there. Beginning and ending fund balance, what's the plan? How can we get back to 7% or more? And then this says at the time in the proposed budget, we had $1 million, and incrementally improving that number is the plan. And so what I did is I created in your packet, there's this little sheet with lots of little numbers, and I'm just going to highlight a couple things. I hate this sheet. I just want you to know that. Putting this out there, I'm like, oh, because it's a projection, and it's really just to demonstrate based on assumptions what the general fund could do. And so I want you to think of it as an illustration to help tell the story. And on your handout, the top part is revenues. which refers to per ADM funding. And then the ADMW, which has got a little blue underline in that, that is on our cohort survival, not counting in migration. So we don't know about kids that come in, but it's showing both cohort survival and the graduating out number of students. And so that's what's really impacting our revenue there. And you can see that if we land at 750,000 at the end of next year, this says balance forward. Then the next biennium, we start out good because typically the state school fund goes up, and it's tiny, but it's illustrative. The little chart in the lower right is you don't have to look at the numbers. That's the state school fund and local revenues growth over time. That's what that's demonstrating, is that it grows. And then the table at the bottom to the left of that just shows what it's been in the bienniums, what that growth is. And then there's an average there just to show what that growth was over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 biennium. And I used 8%, less than that 8.68% for growth in the next biennium. So anyways, scrolling down where it says projected ending fund balance, things that are currently included, we would end that first year of the biennium well. However, the enrollment drop that would happen in 28, 29 would pretty much take out the fund balance at that point. And so we would be down there. And then looking out at the next biennium, again, that's like crystal ball gazing, because we really don't know, because the legislature sets those levels. You can see we're still bouncing right along about $1 million. So we're not making much improvement. So that is just an illustration of where the general fund would go without any additional cuts, changes, or new revenues. So
Questions on that? Feel like that one, we shouldn't let that go by without some thoughts.
So the way I'm looking at this, I know a lot of it's crystal ball because it's way too far out for us to project, but you're essentially stating this could be another 8 to 9, maybe 10 years before we get to our 7% policy.
that's what this would show, yes.
Okay.
Not saying that's what
I'm
we're
good,
doing,
yeah.
but that's what this
Yeah,
projects out.
I know,
Yeah.
and I know it's just an illustration, it's not set in stone, and there's gonna be lots of changes between now and 9 years, but okay, thank you, that's all I have. Go ahead.
And I'm not sure if I'm fully comprehending it right, but it seems like there's a lot of hope that 2033, 34 year is all of a sudden gonna
Yeah,
net an extra 4 million.
fiction.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. That's why I
understand that.
highlighted the purple at the bottom, as I said, that's probably as far as we could look and have some reasonable, assumptions that could be near truth.
As I look at this, the couple of things jump out at me. The first one is 28, 29 shows that drop in ending fund balance, which means we're going to have to, there's an issue there. We're going to have to deal with that. This projects out, we're doing the same thing every year, but that drop there means it's just illustrating there's a problem that we're going to have to deal with at some point. Because of, again, I don't see us dropping to 400,000 ending fund balance without us, again, looking at and changing what we're doing. But this, I think, gives an indication of kind of what's out there on the horizon for us that we're going to have to prepare for.
Coming back to something about this more. So this is also project like, okay, we get what we usually re-up curriculum every 7, 8 years. So is there a spot here where we're needing to dip into some of this for curriculum updates and purchases?
Are you looking at this?
Yeah, I'm just saying there's nothing, I mean, there's no line item. I was just saying, did we even think about like, oh, we just purchased something 2 years ago. And so 5 more years from now, we're going to have another dip if we stay on our 7-year pattern, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever that pattern is.
There's not,
It's the
there's no
same.
investment in here.
Yeah,
No,
to show that.
in a
Okay.
big thing, yeah.
Above what we're currently investing.
What we have this, yeah.
Right.
Is it 28, 29 when PERS is expected to go up again? And is that also part of why there's a lower number there?
Yeah, we really don't know what's going to happen with PERS, and that kind of leads to the next one. Good job. So what I put in the Q&A was, I put links to the first presentations we had earlier this year, and I put just what a 1% increase or decrease would be. It costs us about 330,000 based on the current payroll. And the reason I don't want to project what that is because number one, the market did really well last year, better than expected on the investment and the PERS fund. But also we're hearing that there something could be coming to help alleviate the PERS rate the next couple of years too. We don't get our actual PERS rate until December for the next year.
But you used
to
29%. So that's what you used, a very healthy, it's a strong estimate of, I think we're underneath that, but still, that's what he used in this, was a large PERS estimate every year.
Pretty close. The thing that makes me the most nervous is being pegged on a number and then coming back to me. So that's why I'm so shifty. Don't hold me to it. That's why I don't like this sheet of paper. It's going to be fine. So yeah, so we'll get more information on PERS probably as these talks about school budgets happen. And then in December, we'll have a real percentage for the next biennium. And then we'll be talking about what kind of relief the legislature might offer, and then what the market does on what those employer percentages are. And we'll have more information about our expiring bonds too, and how that affects our payroll rates in the next couple of years too. So we have lots of information to come on that stuff.
Nathan, I have a clarification about the PERS. Is that factored on the tier 1 primarily? So that'll have a run out at some point?
It's factored based on the employees and where they land now. So our employees in our system are whatever tier they're in is attached to their payroll record. And so when we do the projections, it's projecting out based on what tier they're in. Is that what you're asking?
Well, doesn't tier 1 have a heavier burden than tier 2?
Percentage wise, yes. But as far as cost wise, not as much anymore as the number of tier 1s decrease. So we're right around 26% of our staff are tier 1, tier 2. That it's getting bigger, that officer folks. So yeah.
I want to thank both of you for putting this together. This is something that I've been asking for 2 years, and it really helps me. It brings me comfort in moving a budget forward, understanding what the future holds. Because every decision we make this year will have an impact on our future years. And that's been, I think, some of the trouble in the district historically has been because we haven't been looking at more than the current year that we were in. And so thank you for showing us that it's not reasonable to think that fund balance is going to come back in a couple of years. It's just not possible with the resources we have. And this is without the local option levy.
Correct.
Yes. So the one thing that the local option levy would help is bring us sustainability sooner. And that's one of the reasons, and not the only reason, but it's an important one, is why I'm voting yes on the local option levy. I see it as the only way out for this district to get back on its good financial standing to provide the education we need for our children.
So that's a great segue. I think you should go to it.
Just go to the local option.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your packet, the sheet that looks like this. So this is our strategic plan for the local option. And it's going to take me a second. I don't remember if I have a slide for this or not. Hold on just a second here.
Sorry I threw you, but it just seemed like a logical conversation because we do have a plan.
Oh, I have a link. That's on the link here. I'm gonna put it on the screen and I'll make it bigger. Just so I can use my mouse to point out where I'm looking and talking. That's okay. Okay, so what's on this sheet? So this top section up here, these in this long box right here, is the anticipated levy receipts. And then the beginning balance after the activities that happen in the next box. Okay. So, so over the course of the 5 years, this shows that we're in this projection, we're anticipating a little over $32 million. We're highlighting, let me go, sorry, let me keep orienting. So down below.
So go to the 4,800. What is that?
Okay, so we'll go top to bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're identifying $4.8 million in license salaries and benefits. And again, we kept this simple. The local option levy dollars are going towards licensed staff teachers. So that's what we're going to spend it on. And so we're identifying $4.8 million of offsets for licensed staff. And then we're going to leave some money there at the end of the year, $1.3 million. Okay. So what you see up here now is that 1.3 million is carried forward. We have levy receipts that have gone up. Again, this is showing a 3% increase. It will likely be higher, but we don't know what the future holds, so we're being conservative in this. And then there's some contractual increases that happen with those salaries, which here is estimated at 240,000, which makes this number go up. So we're spending more on these salaries and benefits, but we still don't want to spend it all. And so what's happening here is we're building up a balance in this local option fund. When what we're going to do, what we plan to do is to use that to offset expenses once the levy is depleted or once we stop getting revenue. So we're going to have a balance that's going to help us in year 6 that we'll spend out. And then that takes us to the next part of this is that we're going to create a separate, so what's going to happen is we're going to take expenses out of the general fund, right? So it's going to free up the ability to spend money or not in our general fund, okay? And so what we're going to do is we want to set money aside again for that after the 5 years. And so we're going to establish a stability fund in this first year, which will be a separate fund. It'll be a transfer out of the general fund. We have some add backs that are happening that we talked about, or that were talked about. That's to a spreadsheet, not to the thing, sorry. And I'm just gonna run over there, this is one of the questions in this Q&A too that we're answering now. Good job. So this is what's coming back. 17.5 classroom teachers are restored. Music and PE, instructional coaches or teachers on special assignment, special ed assistants, getting rid of furlough days, restoring that discretionary budget, and then starting to rebuild that ending fund balance. So that's what's coming back. So that's the difference between the proposed budget and if the levy passes. Not everything that we're cutting this year is coming back, just this piece. Okay, so those are the factors that are included in this sheet. And then so we're adding some back to the general fund balance in this idea. And then this is that new stability fund now has a balance of 100,000. Okay. And so this progresses in building a general fund balance. The highest point we're showing up to 9% here. But at the end of the 5-year period, the goal is to have about $5 million. Now, what will happen during this time is we're going to be managing changes in whatever our reality is, whether that's from the legislature or local factors or the economy. So there's going to be some changes to this, but this is the idea that we have to move forward. Okay. So at the end of the 5-year period, this stability fund, which will be a special revenue fund, is going to have a balance of $4.5 million. So in the first year, after the levy, there's going to be a $263,000 short in this projection that the general fund is going to have to pick up. Okay, but there's still going to be that $4.5 million there. Then in year 7, which we're out in 2033, those same salaries, I'm just using that as a continual measure as they grow. That's the offset amount is a 6.4 million in this case. We have 3.2 million that's going to come from that stability fund. I don't know if you see that there. And then the general fund's got to pick up the other 3.2 million. And then in year 8, that stability fund is depleted. So that ending balance of 1.3 is spent, and the general fund has to pick up that 5.4 to make up that 6.7 million of those subject salaries per se. And then at that next year, which isn't listed there, 2035, there's nothing left. We're just all general fund. So that's that. And the one thing I'll note though is that, and it'll come up later in the slides too, is that we're creating a separate fund for the local option, but it's reported as part of the general fund. And so we're going to be separating what our general fund balance is, Fund 100, and what 120 is, the local option levy. But when in reporting, those things are going to be together. So effectively, or by rule, we'll probably be at, our general fund balance will be up to the board policy sooner, but we're going to be looking at it as just the Fund 100 fund balance, not combination. Does that make sense?
So there's a lot of info. So couple of things I just want to point out. The key for us in utilizing this levy is not to spend it, is to save. It's basically one-time money. And so like as much as we can save as possible, if we get increased state school fund in the future, we should not expand with it. What we need to do is start moving the FTE that is in this levy back to the general fund early, and then just saving the extra money in this levy. The levy is doing exactly what Claire was talking about, which is it's providing us a mechanism to get back to stability. And the key there is we need to not expand into the levy. We have to continue to save, become more efficient, but utilize this to give us 8 years of time to figure this out rather than 1 year overnight. So that's really the plan here is that it's, and this is if nothing changes and Nate's estimates are all correct, we're going to have to manage that. But the key is we need to, if there is more money in the state school fund, we got to start moving FTE back into the general fund, use the levy as just push more of it into the stability fund, and then utilize it to kind of cushion our way out of this, the levy ending. So that's the plan. Greg.
I'm gonna have you grade me on my comprehension skills. So I'm gonna try to summarize what I think I'm hearing. So if the levy passes, it will ignore increase it roughly $6 million a year. And this plan would have 1.1 million of that every year going into like a super savings account, the stability fund, and would have about 1 million of that building our general fund balance. And so that leaves roughly 4 million that is essentially restoring furlough days, keeping the cuts that we would have to make if the levy doesn't pass. And what that would do over those 5 years is then, because we're putting that money into savings, because we've built up the ending fund balance, that gives us an additional 3 years after the levy is done to spend out of that and keep things stabilized and still have a healthy ending fund balance.
Yes. And we've got to really think about how we're moving the FTE back into the general fund from the levy from years 3, 2. I mean, year 2 will be the first year of that next biennium. That's going to be the opportunity where we really get to look at what are our revenues coming and how are we going to manage that. So I think that year 2 is really kind of going to be a big one for us to figure out how we do some of this.
I have a question. Okay, so we're asking for levy. It's starting Jan 1, 2027, correct? We-
We're collecting
It starts
July 1.
So we start getting it with October's tax receipts. So as soon as you get your property taxes in October, it's going
Yeah.
to include the levy. Because we give the county the information in July. And then they levy it in the next tax season. So 2026.
So, but as part of our levy, we said we're gonna start collecting it in July.
In the 26 tax year, yeah.
Okay. And then, okay, well then that might, because I was thinking, because usually when I get my property taxes is for the year in the rears, right? And so if I was thinking year 2027's would be then you're getting it actually in the 27-28
No,
fiscal year for us, and then that,
it's a 26-27 year for us.
okay, but that's not gonna be for, is it, so in July, does that get billed the full future year then? Or is it only from, so when I pay it in October, November, and December, whenever that is, after I get the bill, am I only paying the 4 to 6 months of it, or am I paying a full year in advance?
You're paying the full year. Yeah, it's your levy taxes for that tax year.
Okay.
So as you think about your tax bill you get now, you're now paying for a whole year. You're like when we pay, if the levy doesn't pass, we're still paying all of 26, 27 in that property tax payment in October, November. We're paying for the whole year all at once.
We're paying the rears though, so we're paying for 26. At the end of this year, we're paying for this year's
So I
property
think it's
taxes.
semantics because we're getting an election here in May.
Mhm.
In order to levy, we get it to the assessor by July 15th. And then it's on the tax bill in October and we receive the funds in the 26-27 year.
Okay. So it actually is impacting already, even though we're voting for it in May, it's gonna be retroactive to January 1st?
I've not heard it referred to as retroactive, but
Well, I
technically,
mean,
yes. I mean,
So it's
you're
a
getting the
fiscal
bill.
year,
yeah,
July 1 to June 30th.
but that's for us, but the county doesn't look at it that way, does it?
Yes.
Yeah.
All government entities in the state of Oregon,
Okay,
not,
maybe
I
that's my
can't
lack of
say all of
knowledge.
them, but many of them, local governments run from July 1 to June 30th.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that was my luck and odds. Okay, because I was gonna question the gap and like the way I'm thinking about it's gonna be like a whole another year because I'm not understanding it. And I had it actually write out like, okay, when do I think this would be coming and paid versus like when it hits our actual budget and
So when you pay your tax bill, within a couple weeks of you sending that money in, it comes to us.
right.
So
So-
we get tax payments every month based on what people send it,
Right.
what they pay.
Gotcha. Okay.
So most of the tax receipts we receive in October, November, December. So we see most of the local revenue come in.
This is part of the calculus around having it on the May ballot, right? Instead of the November ballot,
Correct.
because then it would be
Mhm.
the following year. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Nate, just to clarify on your, report, year one, it would be, we need to look at it as 26-27 year.
These are fiscal years. So
Okay.
26, 27.
26-27, year one, year two would be 27-28.
Yep.
So,
Correct.
yeah, makes it slightly like.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things where you look at things and you just type it, it looks good, second. And then just note at the top, I put levy depleted in year 6 and the stability fund depleted in 2034. So that's up there too. Okay. Skipping PERS, there were some graphs that didn't have the proposed numbers in it. Those have been updated and will be in the adopted. But in the it's not a girl.
Wait, are you going down the list?
Yeah.
Okay, there was a question you missed right above it, the equity and access.
Yeah, so on the EL programs, Jillian's going to give a presentation and just as soon as we get through with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're going to have Tina and Jillian present their pieces. Thought it would be better for them to present versus have some like huge response in here. So Just these pages will be updated. I'm just gonna show them. They'll now have a proposed line, possibly tiny up there, in there, in the adopted. Go back.
Nate, can I ask one more question about the
Yes.
the levy?
Yeah.
Like strategic
Yes.
planning. So I'm just trying to square in my mind on the first handout that we were looking at, this one.
Yep.
In that same year, 2033-34, which would be year 8.
I was worried somebody was
On
gonna
the
pick
other
with
one.
Andy.
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, right? Like, given the projections, our ending fund balance is 10.13%. If without the levy, but in this case, our ending fund balance is 8.8%. I'm sure there's a reason for that. Is it the fact that we've got
Where are you seeing 10%?
on this document?
Yeah. So the percentage of, oh, you're looking at the far end, 30, okay. Yeah, so they use different assumptions. So, so that's the problem about creating things in separation, is you put in different assumptions and you get different numbers. And so like I said, the 31 to 34, those aren't necessarily matching up with the assumptions that were in the local option. I'll say that. This local option strategic plan. So one was created in January, one was created like 2 weeks ago.
Well, I think the easy way to say it is that if the levy passes, we won't make the cuts that are in this current budget.
Yeah,
And the
it'll be-
projections without the levy are projecting out those cuts.
That's what I was trying to clarify. So this document includes the cuts that
In the
are
proposed budget.
proposed for.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's what I was hoping to clarify.
The math guy in me is like, why don't you use the same numbers on every little thing? And it's like 2 weeks. Okay, projection. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Greg.
No team. Okay, we're gonna talk, Jillian's gonna talk about grants in a little bit. Special revenues, so Tina's gonna talk about her program shortly. There was FTE question on migrant education, but Jillian will touch on that too. PowerPoint was included. The scattergram, there was a question on the salaries that were in there, and it was looking at the actual salary. So if someone started late, it reflected their salary on a shortened calendar, so the multiplication didn't seem like it was working correctly. So what we did is we just took the FTE to multiply it times the salary on the schedule to show what that amount is. So that's been updated.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So with the original one that was in the packet, it showed, sorry, I promise I'll get somewhere, 26,689,000 as the total on the scattergram. That kind of lined up to the combined in the budget statement, the combined expenditures for licensed and classified staff. 26.3.
So this scattergram is based on what's currently in our payroll system. So this one actually isn't budget. This is what is our FTE as of April 2nd. So this is just
For this year.
yes.
What's in here is the adopted number.
Right, which is going to be different. So this is a live picture just to show what we have right now. And
So the one in the budget originally, the scattergram was this, just different.
it was this based on the 4.2, but what was different was that she had pulled based on the actual calendars of staff that were in that position versus multiplying times the annual salary on the salary schedule. So those are two different math equations. So
Okay.
that was why.
So I guess I'm confused then why it dropped substantially with the updated one you gave us.
I can go back and see what that reason is, but
Okay, I guess my biggest thing I'm trying to figure out, because it's really hard to see all of the salary lines combined in the budget. There's not like a one spot you can see that. So I was assuming that that was our assumption of salary payroll for the budget. Is that a wrong assumption?
I will say that every chart and graph can be from a different point in time and look at some different conditions, so they're going to be different. Just like with the enrollment thing that Kim brought up, which will come up a little bit later, but
there's
So-
got to be a way that we're projecting in a budget
Yeah.
what we're expecting to spend on salaries, whether it's exact or not. There has to be an assumption of that number.
yeah,
I guess I was under the impression that this was that assumption.
no, this is just to show what's currently in the system as of the date that it was pulled. So the best way to look was in the graphs that are in the beginning of the budget.
And add up all the individual schools.
Well, we have a summary. Should have a summary in here. Well, we have it by site, it looks like. But I will
guess
add,
there's
I
an
will add it to the
instructional
general
programs totals.
Go to page 48, general fund, that object.
Oh, yeah, so that's what I'm looking for. There we go.
That's the new one, and the budget for 27.
So back
These
here.
would be salaries and benefits. That's just for general fund, though, that won't be any grant fund.
Right.
positions.
It's bigger here. So this page here shows the salary and benefits for all staff. And are you wanting it by just license? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was under the impression that scattergram was showing the amount of teachers, FTE at those locations, how much those cost. And my assumption was that that was for the budget.
You're forecasting for that.
And it's just the salary only. It doesn't include payroll costs or benefits.
Sure.
So
Is that the case though? No,
The scattergram's actuals right now.
Right.
or, right, okay.
Yeah.
And this is, yeah, and
Thank
then
you.
what's in the proposed budget is what we're proposing.
Okay.
So different numbers.
Well, and the proposed budget has reductions too.
Yeah.
Roll-up costs, add roll-up costs minus the reduction.
I guess for me, I think I'm just confused now about the scattergram in
So
general.
the intent of all the information is to help give an understanding of what's in the budget or what costs are or from different perspectives, but I don't think it sometimes is easy. It's just a way to try and demonstrate the numbers.
That's great, and thank you, Claire. This is very helpful. I was trying to do the additions through every line through there, so this is great. I missed that. Thank you.
The other thing the scattergram will show you is the experience of your teachers, and the ones that are freshly out of college are what usually about half of what the most experienced ones are. So when you look at how your distribution of your FTE, you get an understanding, are we at an average district in our costs for our teachers? Or but the more RIF we have, the more that average cost goes up, right? So that's what a scattergram, that's why I've always looked at a scattergram.
And you can see that we have the right column there on that one. The biggest number is the 91.5, which is the folks at the bottom of the schedule. Their schedules.
So I guess the bigger question why I was looking at this in the first place and I asked last time is trying to go back and understand again how this is projected with cuts. I get that there's PERS increases. I get that there's step increases. I'm just still confused at how we're dropping 17.5 licensed staff and our salaries are going up. It still isn't clicking for me. So I was hoping in my head I could figure out, all right, do we have more of these high cost teachers? And I can kind of see that visually that would make that clear, because it still doesn't quite add up in my head how those amount of teachers with a 3% increase still,
So the all-in cost of 17.5 teachers, I mean, on average, so if we're using 120,000 as the cost of that licensed staff, is $2.1 million. The agreements in our contracts with admin, confidential professionals, supervisory, classified, and licensed total almost 3.5 million for those for contractual increases. So we still have those increases, even though we're cutting $2.1 million in staff.
Okay.
There'll be some reduction in what that cost is.
Yeah.
But we still have, but you can just see there's a difference in what that is.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
We have also added a day back in
And a
next
day.
year, and that's for every teacher. So that
Yeah.
all those things make changes to those two big numbers you're looking at.
Thank you.
Does this licensed staff, does this represent all staff, including
yeah.
grant funded staff?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last one, I'll stick to Dave. We had a question about how the governor's executive order on furlough days affects us.
So I'm going to start with, I think one of the parts of the executive order is they need to do emergency rulemaking because there's just about, especially many districts on the east side have lots of questions about a 4-day week. They have questions about how many days they had in 24, 25. But here's what the order says. ODE shall communicate it to any district that has adopted or implemented a reduction in student instructional time. And they've made a new definition of what student instructional time is. It's not the same as what we used to call instructional time in Division 22. But just so you know, they changed the definition there. FAR 90. So I want a reduction in instructional time for the 25-26 school year. That's this year. Or next year. And implemented a reduction in time. And the baseline, if we did, then we have 90 days to provide a plan, submit to ODE. How the district will restore instructional time to no less than 24-25. So 24-25, we had 8 furlough days. 25-26, we had 5 furlough days. We restored 3 furlough days. The next year, we're forecasting 4 furlough days. We're restoring another year. I don't believe that we're going to trigger their situation. Now, I can also tell you that they're writing the rules, and it may just be that if you have the word furlough in your calendar, that it's going to trigger what they are doing. But the way it's written right now, I don't think we trigger. If we do, if I get a call from ODE, then we'll submit a plan on how by the year 27, 28, we'll have no furlough days. I still, I mean, I want to have no furlough days next year. That's where, I mean, that's where we all need to be. I think the issue that I see is furlough day, all of this costs money, and the state has been willing to pass executive orders without any money. And what they're forcing districts to do is now only raise class size. And I think that's a challenge for almost everybody. So that's the way that I'm reading this executive order right now. We'll find out more coming. ODE has got to put together or reallocate people inside their organization now to check. I mean, they already do this with Division 22, so they have folks who do this, but now they have to do it twice because of this is different than the way they're measuring Division 22 compliance to instructional time. So they're actually going to have to now look at it twice. But I'm still kind of waiting to see who those folks are, and then we'll go from there. But that's what I know right now.
What is the different measure they're giving for instructional time?
It's basically bell to bell is what they're measuring. And there was some conversations about how professional time and conferences wouldn't count. The state board came back and said, no, we're gonna add those in, but chances are they're gonna remove it down the road. So they're making some changes. Now, part of this I think is good because I think many other states use the bell to bell measure as a way of measuring instructional time. which I think is good for us to be able to compare between different states. And because we're measuring it different, I think that's a problem. I think the bigger issue for me was more about how this executive order happened and the fact that they did not really ask any educators how this might go. That to me, I think I think their intentions are, we all want I want 180-day school year. That's another $2.5 million for us to get from 173 to 180. I would love to have more school days, but you have to pay for more school days.
Dave, do you have any idea kind of what the driver of that executive order is? Is it like from absenteeism of kids where like the physical time that they are in school is less than, even though you're providing enough days? It kind of seems, I'm not really sure what the driver is behind it, but what's trying to be fixed.
It's both. Attendance is a huge problem in Oregon. The number of kids who are missing school is tremendous. We also have one of the shortest calendars in the nation. I think in comparison to Washington and other states around us, after 12 years of school, Oregon schools can have as much as a year less of school. So I totally understand the governor. I mean, this is absolutely something that we should be very concerned about. But to implement this, you have to pay employees. You have to bring money to this to make this happen. And that's this whole idea that we're just going to tell districts you can no longer use furlough days and you now must do 173 without the involvement of the different unions that we work with and the different districts and what their situation is. I think that is just, I don't even know what to say about that. I'll just stop there. I better stop there.
I'll add in that Stand for Children was a big driver of this, working with the governor's office. And I firmly support Stand for Children. I think personally how they went about doing it without having any consultation with the providers of education. But I think from a aspirational component, right, we want kids in school, and I don't disagree with their platform. In fact, I support them wholeheartedly in a lot of things. I think just how it was done was just a little challenging. But it could also be the thing that sort of forces the hand in the legislature in, the next session. Is they're going to hear from all these school districts that this is an impossible situation and we can't meet this measurement unless we have more investment from the state. So I'm hopeful that that's the direction that goes. So, because we are always being compared, and people tell me that all the time. Oh, we're the worst and the terrible. No. It's like, no, stop. Just watch a different news perspective for once, please.
Well, and so Newberg, though, for the number of days that we have in the year, we are over the minimum. So it, even with taking out a day or, days out of the calendar, we're still above that minimum, but it's more of you want even more days. And for the calendar that we have, how do we compare with, other districts in our area? Are we like actually providing less days or kind of comparable, even though we cut out days from that calendar?
No, we meet the minimum standard. But we're definitely less days than those folks around us because we have 5 furlough days in our calendar. I think 168, I think, is where we're at. We should, with a normal calendar, we'd be at 173. I would, like I said, as a school person and looking at where our kids are and where 180, we should do this. And many states around us are already at 180. I have no problem with that. I also don't have any problem at all with the accountability measures that they passed last spring. Schools need to be accountable. I don't have an argument with that, but you got to give us some tools. Like, again, meeting these standards means we need to have kids in school. It's the other reason why I said is the attendance is another big issue for us, is we're still after the pandemic, it hasn't been mandatory to go to school. I mean, we, the amount of chronically absent student has increased, and we're still, as a state, dealing with that.
Well, and not to go further down that rabbit hole, but from my line of work, they removed, I mean, with that, they removed all potential enforcement or with parents or anything. There's no, unlike other states. So,
Right.
you know, a state that struggles with enrollment or not enrollment, attendance, then they, like you said, made it essentially something they can choose. So
Yeah.
another one of those fun decisions made.
Should we take a 5-minute break, or are you guys fine? Go ahead.
I think we could. I will. I think we should take 5-minute break. Come back at 7:25. I'm good. 7:45. We'll be back.
What do we?
And then
going, it was walking into it and you. It was they had more social workers, not counselors, not mental health counselors, or counselors, but they had more social workers in that. And we do higher than we do counselors in our entire district. Think of that.
Now you're. All right, welcome back. So continuing on, I had a quick question regarding enrollment numbers on the budget packet. So this is kind of looking at the beginning. So looking at page 27, the enrollment numbers that we have on here are different than some of the handouts that we've gotten. So
Just a little explanation there. Yeah, happy to explain. So for the pages from 17 to 20, well, yeah, 27. Any of the numbers that reference a student counts or enrollment are pulled from the state school fund, which is a number that changes every time it's issued. And so that refers to an ADM or FTE number. So that's it. It's a different source than the slides that you're seeing, like when Dave shows the difference in grades on a chart. Say it says kinder for a second. It could be at that time that information is pulled, or oftentimes districts will use October numbers to show what enrollment is. So that's going to be why you're going to see differences in numbers on what our budget's looking at versus some of the explanatory slides that like Dave might have used in a local option, or talking about the cohort changes in grade to grade. Does that help? So we keep numbers internally that come out every month. We call them our like May 1 counts, which is going to be a warm body counts, the student count. Like a kid is 1, whereas that kid on the state school fund, if he only attends here a portion of the year or a portion of the day, he's going to have a less than 1 value. So it's going to show a lower number. So our state school fund, when it says 3,800 or 3,900, that's going to be more of that ADM or full-time equivalent number versus how many's in a class. Did I totally confuse that? Did I do good? Claire, were you going to add something? You had sparkle in your eye for a second.
okay, so I guess my follow-up on that is for the proposed budget that we have, what is the number that it's based on, the enrollment number that we're using?
So in the first slideshow, there's a slide that shows the ADM that's used on the state school fund. Let's see if I can hold it
What
up.
if you need 27?
No, it was in the slideshow. Greg asked it in the last meeting as well. Let me get this thing out of the way. Wait just a second here. Oh no, you had the first slideshow was a question in here.
So the revenue is always going to be based on the hold harmless number from a prior year when we're in a declining enrollment. So you can't compare what current ADMW is to what you're being paid on revenue because we're in a declining enrollment. So in other words, this year's whatever we end up will be our highest number for next year.
So we're paid on something called ADM weighted. So earlier we talked about special ed funding. We get a second weight for 11% of the kids. So that's even a different number on top of that. But what this little slide, this little snippet shows is that we have a 26-27 weighted average daily membership, and we have a 25-26 average daily membership weighted. And what they're going to pay us on, which is to the right, what they're extending is the higher of those two numbers. And so it's the same with our student count as well, the base number without the weights. They're going to count us based on whatever the higher of the 2 years is, where it falls in the weighting.
That's what this is.
Yes. So yeah, that number, Dave's looking at page 27, the 3853 is off of the state school fund sheet that we had at the time of creating that document.
And then, so with the ADMW, you know, looking at the extended one, then you're looking at kind of keeping enrollment somewhat the same or dropping, like, to calculate out what.
Yeah, so like in the projection sheets, we're trying to look at our enrollment changing as what we call cohort survival. So typically we lose kids or gain kids in certain grade levels at certain times. And looking at the graduation of how many is going out and how many are projected to come in. So that's what we look at. But as far as funding goes, funding is always going to be driven by what the state's going to give us based on our actual ADM numbers.
But we're anticipating we're going to decline for the next 3 years because we have larger classes in the high school and smaller classes in the kindergarten.
So if you go back to this sheet, a good way to see what we're looking at is that ADMW line, which is blue, should be blue. You can see that number changing under each year. And this shows we actually are declining for the next 8 years. So, I mean, and this doesn't account for in-migration, but all things the same, that's where we're headed.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
So that actually gets me thinking about, while we're talking about this and the projected ADMW, this isn't using an extended number for the projection.
No, so it would be the higher of the years that it's considering. So it technically is a year in arrears. That is.
So it does not mean
it's
it
really
is using the extended ADMW?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Because we're in a decline, so it's always looking to the prior year.
Okay. So that is to say, we're anticipating an ADMW for 26-27 that is 4428.99.
By the model, yeah.
Which that just so happens to be what our 24-25 ADMW was. Yeah, you just had a slide up a second ago that showed extended.
The extended ADMW. Where did I have that here? Sorry. I think I closed it.
It could be just total coincidence. I just thought that was.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to pull it up again?
Okay.
I don't think it was 24.5, it was 29.6, which is the whole harmless number this time.
I thought the 25-26 was the 4.561. Maybe you should pull it up, Nate. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I understand.
And it should be this year's on that one too.
Oh, I see. So next year, okay, I understand now. I understand now. I was thinking the dates were in, yeah.
Yes. I'll leave it open. And go back to here. Okay, so I introduced Tina Sands over here on the end. Tina is our nutrition services supervisor. And her assistant Charlene back here have the buckaroo job of rallying all the kitchens and ladies and gentlemen that we have in the kitchens to serve meals, breakfast and lunch to our students. So Tina's gonna kind of just go over her program and a little bit how it's funded and some other information that she thought would be helpful.
Okay, starting with funding sources. nutrition services, we have local funding, which comes from our purchase meals, which is majority of the time it's just adult meals, student second meals. We have vending at the two middle schools, Chehalis Valley and Mountain View, and then small amount of catering. Yep.
Let's make sure everybody has that.
Yeah. So there was a handout in your packet.
This one. Okay. And then the next one would be state funding, which comes, I'll just go ahead and read, comes from state government in the form of grants or supplemental meal reimbursements. We had a non-competitive reimbursement grant. This year was where we got $16,000. And then we have a breakfast after the bell grant at Edwards and Springbrook. And that one is 2,023 for each of the schools, so a total of 4,046. And then our biggest funding source would be the federal government. So that would come in the form of grants and our meal reimbursement and our commodity entitlement, which basically drives my menu. That's all our USDA foods. And like I said, that's how I pretty much plan my menu off of the foods we get from the commodity dollars. Revenue and expenses. Once again, revenue comes from the reimbursement claims, vending machines, adult meals, and student second meals. We have a little bit of a la carte which at this point is just additional milk for the kids that have home lunch. They can purchase a milk. Expenses would be salaries and benefits, equipment maintenance, and food supplies. So here's kind of a breakdown of 24-25 actuals in the revenue category. And then the next page is the expenditures for that same year.
And just wanted to point out on that the food service program is different in that they try to have a balance of revenue or of expenditures of either half and half, whereas like in our regular general fund and other funds, like 80% of what we spend is on people. Where about half of what food service does is on people. The other half is on supplies and materials, because food is a consumable and it takes a lot of food to feed kids. So that's one of the big differences between how food service operates and our regular program, is that they try to keep that balanced as much as possible, 50-50, around there. Sorry, Tina.
No, you're fine.
I'll be interrupt her a couple.
Yeah, please do. So, and then the beginning fund balance was 166,000. We did end with the ending fund balance of 214. So we did come ahead a little bit last year on that one.
Let me just chime in on that in a second. That's okay. And so one of the reasons that the fund balance increased year to year for them was that we had a final payment of supply chain assistance, which is the last of the COVID funding. That was $111,000. And then also with the closeout of the last biennium, we'll talk about CEP a little bit later, but instead of funding at the 90% level, which I'll fill in later too, they funded all meals. They funded 100% of the meals at the free rate. So those are two things that contributed to that. Both those things will not be present in the next year to help our fund balance. So
Wait, I'm sorry. You're touching, maybe you open the gate here. You're touching on something where something's not gonna be funded what next year?
say it again.
Well, you just said something's not gonna be funded next year?
So we have no supply chain assistance. So that 111,000, that was the end of COVID. That was the last of
Okay.
COVID money. And then the CEP incentive payment, which
What's CEP?
community eligibility provision, which allows us to serve it to all kids free.
Yeah.
So they reimburse. You want to go or you?
Go ahead, 90%?
They reimburse 90% of our meals at the free rate. So if you look down on the meal reimbursement rates, for every 100 meals that we serve, 90 of them get reimbursed at $4.71, and the other 10 get reimbursed at 55 cents each. So that's their funding goal. The end of the biennium last year, they had enough money to give us 100% of those meals at the free rate, which was good. but we don't have that in the next year. It's going to be at the 90%.
Oh, the 100, so just 100% to 90% is gonna be what's ending, the
Right.
extra 10%.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna also just jump one question here. Because I know this is a topic, what, a year or two ago, or whatever, that, when is the program either from federal or state level where that free meals to every student ends?
At this time, we're approved till 2029,
Okay,
but we can continue to
ask for,
apply again this year, and then that would extend us again for another 4 years.
now, so that's the end of 28, 29, so like June of
Mhm.
29?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Question on that, for getting reapproval, what are those steps that have to be taken? Is that where like families have to provide information, or how does that work?
For the approval of the CEP,
Yeah.
that would be a Charlene question,
I can answer.
or Nate will. So go ahead.
So currently the state does that for us now. So they use what's called direct certification information and Medicaid, Medicare information to create a baseline of who would be free. It also includes foster, migrant kids, runaways. So those McKinney-Vento kids, yeah.
Mhm.
So that creates a base number that we approve with the state, and then there's a multiplier. And so when we get to a certain, it has to be between 25, at least 25% to be eligible for CEP. And what's our percentage now, Tina? Do you remember?
Our claiming ISP is 37.14. Our claiming percentage is 59.42.
Yeah. So anyways, and we're within that bandwidth to reapply every year. And the goal is that when we look at that data every year, if we can get that next approval up a percentage, it increases the reimbursement. And the way that Oregon has done it now is that what that does is that frees up money from the state to support other districts that might have a lower percentage to hit that 90% funding goal of the meals that they serve getting reimbursed at the free rate. So, okay, keep going.
Keep going. Well, we covered the CEP. The next one is basically our current and our future challenges for nutrition services. Again, without the full school calendar day, if the kids aren't there, we're not making any money. So if we're not feeding the kids and we're not getting reimbursed for the meals, that, my funding goes down there. Food costs, they continually are rising. Accessibility of food, the regulations surrounding the ingredients. We've got a lot of foods that they're doing sugar, the sugar content, the calorie content, stuff like that. So they're cutting back on a lot of ingredients. So we're limited to what we can and cannot purchase. Less grant opportunity. Like you said, we lost the supply chain assistance grant. And then equipment repair with kitchens are getting older, equipment's getting older. It's costing more and more to repair them or replace them at this point. So I think we did a freezer. What did we do? We did a refrigerator at Crater this year, and we did a lot of freezer repair around the district. So
one of the things that I wanted to point out, it's kind of around Jeremy's question at the last meeting, was that the rate is set by the federal government, how much we get reimbursed per meal. And that's not a regional number. It's just a blanket number. That $4.71 for a lunch. That's the same that we get that in Oregon, the same that's in Tennessee, the same that's in Maine. So it doesn't take into account minimum wage or any of those things. So one of the challenges we have on the West Coast in general is that we have higher wages and we have higher benefits than does a lot of folks in the South. And so that's kind of the challenge. When CEP, we're offering it free to all kids, but we have to do it within the bounds of the revenue that we receive for each meal. And so it's not a guarantee that all of our costs are covered. Tina and her team manages that piece too. So it's not a free isn't necessarily free, I guess. Way to say that.
our average lunch is about $1.69 if you take the high and the low. And breakfast is about $1.15. And that's just if the kids are just taking the bare minimum of what they're required to take for a reimbursable meal, be one fruit, one vegetable, one entree, and a milk. And then breakfast, they could just take 2 items. But, you know, if they do take more, which we encourage, then the meal cost would go up for us for the meal.
How does the meal reimbursement system work in the summer for the summer food programs?
Summer feeding?
Yeah.
It's basically the same. It's summer feeding is a different program. We don't have to do the offer versus serve. What we do for the school lunch program, summertime, it's a sack lunch, a grab and go. The reimbursement rates, Charlene, are they less or more? They're a little higher for summer feeding. Charlene does all the claiming, so she would know more about that than I do, but it's basically the same process. We tally the meals and we give that information to ODE and they reimburse accordingly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to point out one last thing in your packet really quick.
Oh, you're
This is an ODE slide, but it just shows the green here is just an example of what the federal government pays for. And then the yellow section is what the Student Success Act chips in to make sure that.
Can we put that on the screen?
Yeah.
Is that a slide that we have?
No, it's a handout, but I can.
Oh,
good.
Oh, I did put it on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I did have it. So yeah, and that's really tiny up there, but this just gives an example. The top is the minimum is 25% that you can be on CEP, and then the state's kicking in that other well, there's a multiplier, I should say, but just to look at it, the state's kicking in that amount to make sure that eligible districts get at least 90% funding. And then we're kind of more in the third bar down there where we get 54%. And then the state's kicking in whatever's needed to get us to that 90%. So, and then the 10% of meals. So if we were looking at the total lunches, we had almost 33,000 lunches that we got reimbursed at 55 cents per meal in that category. But they funded it 100% last year. Identified student percentage. So that's like that base level of our direct certifications, our homeless, runaway, migrant folks. So it creates a number, and then there's a multiplier of 1.6 to get to how many get reimbursed at the free rate.
So you said they were reimbursing 100%.
They did last year, yeah.
Is there an expectation that is not happening now?
Yeah, they're gonna tell us they're gonna reimburse at 90%, and if they do have an increase, it will probably be in the second year of the biennium.
Okay.
So,
And
we
so
don't know
then that
until-
last 10% is a cost eaten by.
Yeah, so
nutrition
pretty much
services.
by having 90% at the higher rate, you're supposed to manage it so that you make sure you fit in with that expense. And then the additional 10% was a bonus. We didn't find out about that till the end of the year last year.
Okay, thank you.
How do these two things go together? So we've got claiming ISP 37.14, free claiming percentage 59.42. And then how does that fit in with what's on?
So it's more, so this is ODE is just example of how it could, of these different percentage numbers. It's not our specifics. So ours is the 54 would kind of look like this third bar on this handout.
That's what's throwing me. So there's no 54. We have 37.14 is claiming ISP, and we have 59.42 is free claiming. So which one is it?
So the 34 is our base. And then they multiply that times 1.6 to identify the percentage of meals that we reimbursed at the free rate. This is a statistics program that was created during the Obama era to get more kids free meals, versus prior to this, it was for kids to get free meals, either they had to go through DHS and be on food stamps, or they had to submit a paper application to get approved.
Yeah, I guess I don't need to know all the details of it. I'm just trying to reconcile our sheet with this chart.
Yeah, this chart
But-
is
And
just,
the thing that's throwing me is that here it's talking ISP, but it sounds like really what you're saying is it's really the free claiming percentage that we should be looking at.
so what you can't, the tiny print on the left is the ISP. The green bar is the free claiming percentage. So 25% ISP times 1.6 is about 40%. 40% times 1.6 is 64%. 50% times 1.6 about 80%. And anything above 56.25 gets you to the top.
So Nate, let's boil this down. Because there was a question asked about nutrition services and in the budget. And so we've brought a lot of information here. What do we need to know about next year's budget that you're worried about as far as nutritional services go?
You or him?
You.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh. That's right for Greg to answer.
No.
Okay, Greg.
We're boiling this down because we
So,
got into the weeds.
Yeah, when Tina and I look at her numbers, the thing we're just making sure is that looking at sales, because she runs a business inside the district, are we receiving enough revenue to justify the expenses we're making in staffing and food? So we're looking for school by school or district total. Are we gonna make it? Are we gonna maintain fund balance? Or are we gonna eat fund balance? And so that's what we're monitoring on the nutrition side.
And we had an ending fund balance of 200,000, and there's at least $100,000 in funding that we're not expecting next year. So we're expecting our fund balance to shrink, and that's what you're worried about as far as our choice of foods and all the rest of these things. Is it's a tighter budget.
Right.
Okay,
Boil it down.
thank you.
So given, hi Tina.
Hi.
Given some of the challenges that you've identified here with like rising food costs and, just kids not grabbing the lunch, is there anything that you're specifically focusing on to try and kind of adjust for that for next year?
My plan next year is to reopen the à la carte at the middle schools and the high school and vending at the high school. And that would bring in additional revenue for the program. Because that's, like I said, to get the revenue, that's aside from the federal and the state, that's the way I would need to do it, would be to food sales, basically. Non-program food sales for my department. So that's the plan.
Okay. And then on this handout, you have the average daily participation for
Mhm.
breakfast and lunch. Is that typical for like looking at previous years? Because it shows breakfast for 2025 average daily participation of 1,050, and then lunches of roughly 2,040.
Yeah, pretty much. This year, we're a little bit higher than that. You figure we have 10 schools. Catalyst, so 9 schools. Catalyst is just minimal. So if you divide that by 9, kind of give you an average of what each school does. Obviously, the high school is going to do more than the grade schools and the middle schools. This year, what I'm projecting right now, but the total lunches in 25, we did 329,000. This year, I'm looking at 372,000. Take the average of what we have left, and then breakfasts would go up to about 206 from the 177. So we are increasing at this point, and I think the CEP has a lot to do with that. That's helped.
And adding back days.
Yes, and adding back
She
days.
only gets money when kids come to school.
Yeah.
So.
Another follow-up question. You had said that there is equipment stuff that you've had to repair.
Mhm.
Those kind of those equipment repairs or replacements, is that items that come out of like that you can take out of like construction bond, like for equipment or other funds, or is that all out of your nutrition services?
It comes out of Nutrition Services Fund. My repairs.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a follow-up question.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So as we had the conversation earlier about unfunded executive orders or decisions, is there any indication coming that we're going to see more stringent nutrition requirements in schools that's going to twist this up in the next 2 to 8 years?
You have an answer? You
I'll just make a quick comment. I think so.
Yeah.
With well, they've already started with the sugar standards. And this, all the requirements for the meals, the sugar, the salt, I think they've already started.
Yeah, so when Michelle Obama pushed the changes into child nutrition programs way back in 2010, those still haven't fully been implemented. However, 2 years ago, they pretty much have insisted now in was it a 3-year rollout of lowering sodium. And then also now they're tracking sugars and calories from fat, which were tracked before, but now they've tightened up those. So there's going to be some changes, and then also no food dyes, which we don't have in our products anyways. So yeah, it is. But the great thing is that manufacturers understand the importance of this, and they're willing to make the formulation changes needed. It just takes time. But like she said in her notes, the concern that we always have is with kids, that they accept it, because the chicken nuggets that we serve in schools are not the chicken nuggets you're buying in the grocery store. And I think there's kind of a misconception around why can't you make it taste like what I have at home? It's like, well, when you take the salt out and you add whole grain and, the calories from fat, you have to take fat out because you can't have so much fat for those calories. It changes the product, and that's hard. This is a reminder, I run a purchasing cooperative for 90 school districts. So I'm still in the food industry. So sorry for, but I still have some knowledge. Good question. So thank you.
So I actually have a follow-up question from what Kim was just asking about the equipment. Why can't we use some of the excise tax money that we get to do some of those updates?
We can.
Okay.
But the expectation is that nutrition services be self-supporting, and when we manage it, it should be able to do that. I mean, in certain needs, or if maybe something came up that was larger than is expected, we could determine to use CET for that.
Okay.
But for the most part, we're expecting nutrition services to supply their own needs.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so tonight I would like to talk to you about the program shifts that are part of the budget reductions for the English Language Development Program. This slide in front of you is specifically about the changes that are occurring at Edwards Elementary. So in very long ago years, we had a pull-out ELD model where students would walk to another classroom and receive English Language Development services. Over the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, we've transitioned to more integrated ELD, where our ELD specialists were doing co-teaching in the general classroom. So during English language arts, typically an ELD teacher would come in and co-teach with the classroom teacher at the elementary level. And then mixing into our dual language teachers with that, our dual language program teaches language all day, right? So our dual language teachers are teaching in both English and Spanish. So they're doing English language development and Spanish language development. And there, the English language development is integrated. So this year is kind of really the first year of that transition, where we have co-teaching still occurring, but also our dual language teachers utilizing integrated ELD. So if our dual language teachers have their endorsement to teach English language arts or English language development, they're doing their own in consultation with the ELD specialist. So the ELD specialist might do their language multilingual learner plans, support ELPA testing, do case management, but the dual language teacher is providing the English language development instruction in most of our classrooms. So they're really focusing on student talk and vocabulary building, and all of that's occurring right now with our existing staff. This opportunity has built shared understanding about how ELD services are delivered, the requirements that ELD requires for students, and the ELD standards and goals that we have for our students to acquire language. Then moving into next year, it would be year 2 where we begin to shift capacity, focusing more on that tier 1 instructional support. And so this is where there's some staffing shifts that come into place. Initially, we had talked about reducing 2 ELD specialists, but as we worked through our plan with what that shifts look like, it became obvious that we still needed an additional person. So the reading teacher at Edwards also has her ESOL endorsement, the endorsement needed for English language development. And she is going to be supporting some of the work with our ELD department. So we know that students acquire language best when it's embedded into content. So there's some content there. And then also it's targeting specific reading skills and writing skills. So being able to blend together reading support and language development support is going to move our students in terms of their ability to acquire language at a more rapid pace than the current program we have. So it's not that we're removing support from ELD, but we're from Edwards, but we're shifting the program to focus more on how our dual language classrooms work, and then focusing on that tier 1, so that general education, English language arts support in the classroom. So we would have 2 folks there next year. That doesn't add any costs to the reductions that we talked about because Nicole is using one of the FTE that she had for her classroom teachers for that second position. So we're not adding back anything that we've already proposed to cut. So next year, the goal would be increased access to the core for our multilingual learners and increased access for scaffolding and support for our teachers. And then year 3, the position would really shift to 2 folks focusing on the literacy and language specialists. So right now, next year, we're going to kind of have a quasi position that's a blend of our current ELD specialist and that new literacy and language specialist that's supporting case management and those multilingual learner plans and assessment. So then that 3rd year integrated ELD would be occurring across all classrooms with targeted support specifically to our multilingual learners. So this is really our 3-year plan that's been in process, strengthening core instruction, then adding support for students to build a system that sustains itself.
Quick question. Can you give us a 30-second example of what each of those literacy and language specialist role does now in ELD specialist? I mean, you kind of explained it, but like, what does person A do and what does person B do, and then how are they blending?
So currently, I'll call person A the ELD specialist. They're focusing on the English language development standards, so specifically around reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and supporting the language acquisition. The reading specialist, person B, is focusing specifically on reading support, so foundational skills, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and in some cases, there's some writing support. So what we're saying is we're going to blend those together because learning those in isolation takes students longer to acquire language and to acquire reading proficiency. So we marry them together, and then they're having a faster opportunity to acquire language.
Thank you. Is there any additional, besides the people, and I know you said there's no additional cost because Nicole's going to take whatever she already had allocated, but is there anything for curriculum or anything like any supportive stuff or, what, I don't know, tools that these teachers need or that person needs if it's a blend?
We have been investing in those resources in the last few years because we have been moving with co-teaching and then integrated ELD. Scaffolding supports in the classroom have been purchases that the district has. With some of the shifts, there is a small amount in the Welcome Center budget or the ELD budget to support any curriculum needs that might arise. But in addition to that, one of the focal points of our summer learning program is supporting students in English language development, language acquisition, along with our migrant students and our students that qualify for Title I services. So also we could purchase supports through that summer learning grants as well that support us all year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so then kind of wrapping up, which maybe was your 30-second shift, is this was kind of the first year we were focusing on shared learning. And then year 2, building that structured support and shared responsibility for teachers. And then year 3 is really sustaining and improving those student outcomes. So this approach not only improves core instruction for all students, but also increases access for multilingual learners and leads to stronger reading outcomes at a more rapid pace than what we're currently seeing. Any questions about ELD shifts at Edwards?
What time of year is the ELPA test completed?
The ELPA summative test opens in January. We typically administer it at the end of January through February. Our goal is usually to be done by March, especially for the upper grades, because then that May testing starts. So we really try to condense it into those late January, February months. We have very few, like right now we have most of our ELPA scores back. I think I'm waiting on like 20 remaining. So we finish well ahead of March. And then there's the ELPA screener for new students that occur either when they enter the school district or at the beginning of the school year.
Someday in our abundance of time, I would love to see some ELPA numbers just over the years and how we're doing. That'd be cool.
Well, I can share not our specific numbers, but we have more students than we've ever exited in the last 10 years this year. So the program shifts are working.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to be out of my league here.
Sure.
But I had staff members reach out to me, and so help me or maybe explain to them there's fear or concern that they are losing 2 positions and what that's going to do to administrative overload for testing for different kinds of things. So maybe try to explain to me or to staff how those issues are being dealt with within this plan.
So the addition of that additional FTE and not removing 2 are going to be part of addressing those concerns. There was definitely more communication that needed to occur with the Edwards staff between the transition of the shift. Normally, when we're talking about ELD program shifts, those occur at the end of May. And with the RIF, it sped up that process. So there was definitely communication that needed to occur before the RIFs were announced that I think would have helped share some understanding about where we're going. But that is why we did bring back the second position because the building really does need to for support. And then I would say the biggest difference between Edwards and the other schools, sorry to add on, is our Title I program and all of our reading interventionists. The other buildings have a 0.87 at Mabel Rush for reading intervention support. So this is our classified staff. Dundee, I think, has like academic intervention that they use for reading that's also part-time. So does Crater, but the rest of our schools, they don't have dedicated reading interventionists, which makes some of this shift doable at Edwards as compared to some of our other smaller schools. So with that being said, can I roll into one of the other cuts, which would be the catalyst cut? Do you have more questions?
I have one more. Maybe this is more of a big picture one. So I think this staff member who reached out to me and myself, we care deeply that our migrant students, our English, our ELD students, and our Title I students, our students from poverty, are getting good education. And I know in special ed, there's the term of maintenance of effort where you have to keep, by law, you can't reduce the amount of effort you're giving to students. Is there a similar thing with ELD and or Title I and poverty? Would be one question. And then the second question just is, how are you working to reassure us that you really are meeting the needs of these students in those categories?
Sure. So the first question about maintenance of effort, there is not a level for English language development. In fact, the policy states provide adequate instruction. ODE has this year gone through, last year they did a pilot with updating all of the school district English learner plans. So this year, anyone that wasn't in the pilot also is updating their plans. So ODE is pressing a little bit more on how districts articulate their programming, but there is not a set standard. I will say that within the federal grants themselves, so like our Title III grant that we get for English language development, or our Title I grant that we get for our students who might be facing poverty, you can't, they have a supplant rule. So like if you have something in the grant and then you add something from the general fund, but those funds are still there, that's like a no-no. So like there is a capacity level in terms of like what activities you can carry year over year, and not being able to take things out of the general fund and put them into the grant if those funds are still remaining in the general fund. I would say the English language development doesn't have nearly as much oversight as the special education policy. And I think that's what ODE is attempting to address in their English learner plans.
So, sort of bottom line, I guess the concern that I would have as a community member is that the cuts that we are making in this proposed budget are being equally distributed and are not a higher weight toward our ELD or our students who are Title I in poverty. That would be my concern, and so I'd just be curious how anyone of you would answer that.
So there's 2.5 FTE originally in this budget. The 2 was around the program change, not a cut, the program change in how they're teaching ELD at Edwards. The 0.5 was a Catalyst, and the fact of the matter is Catalyst and COA, and no kids were showing up for the online portion of ELL.
Dave, we also had the 1.0 TOSA for ELD.
Yeah.
So it was
at the
3.5.
district level. So what I would tell you is that the communication with the staff was not as clear, because I don't think everyone really understood that the program change was happening. So that's when they went back and they sat down with staff, started talking through, and through their money pieces, they're still going to have the 1.0. But we didn't envision like a cut to ELL. What we were looking at was efficiencies in the program. I still have we have lots of concerns about ELL and how we were running COTOT in where you have a 1.0 ELD teacher in other schools that had maybe 4 or 5 ELL students. So we've been changing models to make it more efficient, because that wasn't efficient to have a teacher for 4 or 5 students. But it's meant that our ELL model across the district looks different. We've got some pullouts now in some places. We've got COTOT in Maple Rush. We've got Edwards with a program that's changing too. But while there was in this budget less ELL, it was never thought of as a cut, but as an efficiency. Now, I think we still have, the budget is a budget, but I still think there's a lot of conversation for us to have over the next couple of years about ELL and where the funding's going and what do our programs look like. We've got a bunch of different things going on right now. So I don't know if I allayed any concerns, but that's kind of how we're thinking about this.
So I would also add that we are already seeing improved student results from doing integrated ELD. So that started with co-teaching. The high school and Mountain View have been doing integrated ELD. So that's when the classroom teacher is the ELD teacher and is braiding that together. The high school has had more exits this year than ever that I can find. So I will definitely be bringing that data, because I think, back to your second question, it's super important to make sure that the program shifts we're making are actually effective and not just in theory. And our data is already showing us that those shifts are working where we've done them already. So then the last little piece on that would be Catalyst and COA. And there we're going to have integrated ELD as well. So with some of the shifts that are making, we'll have ELD being taught at the same time as the language arts. We found that some of our students had barriers to participation with having additional meetings specifically that are only addressing ELD, or at Catalyst with the supports that students need for their experience at Catalyst and then being able to pull those students out of class just to get English language development support, like, isn't a great service model for them. So we're braiding those two together.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk about grants or migrant? I don't have a slide for migrant, but I can talk about it.
I think wrap this thing up, but yes, let's talk about migrant and
Okay.
grant funding.
Okay, so to wrap up migrant, our migrant funds are pass-through dollars from the WESD. So we are in a consortium with the WESD, and we are in a regional area, and they dictate how much funding we receive in our budget. They write the narrative. We can provide some details in terms of input. Last year, you'll note the discrepancy in the budget book says 2.81, and next year, I believe it said 0, and that is not accurate. So at the beginning of this year, it was budgeted 2.81. We make the budget in the spring, but then when the migrant funds come in, there is discrepancy there. So our migrant population has been dramatically shrinking. And year over year, for probably the last 5 years, we've been reducing FTE in the migrant education department. So last year, we started with our program recruiter and a half-time migrant graduation specialists that worked at high school and Catalyst. And we had a little bit of migrant preschool in there, and then our program supervisor. And over time, that shrunk. So now the only thing we have this year is the program recruiter and the migrant graduation specialist. Those funds will again shrink for next year, and the only thing we'll have is the program recruiter. So again, the ESD gives us our allotment of the funds they receive from the region. And the ESD has said that their priority for us is retaining students in the program. So they are directing us to use those funds for the recruitment. We get separate migrant summer school funds in the summer. That's not attached to the regular school year. So there was also a discrepancy there about there being no supplies for summer learning for migrant summer school. And that wasn't the case because last year we used the summer learning budget to supply those funds. So that's why it wasn't in the migrant budget, because the migrant budget focused on people, which is what our ESD likes us to work on, is that FTE, and then use other sources for supplies. And since we had the summer learning grant, that's the way we went, which will thankfully be the way we'll go again this year. Any questions on the migrant programming? I would just say with the loss of the graduation specialist, we are working closely with the high school to reevaluate some of the roles that our current ELD staff have there to see where we can grab those areas of responsibility that that person had to continue providing that support. Okay, so then we move into the grant funding overview. So right now we have 30 individual unique grants that support our district. 20 of them are state and federal grants. 3 of them are from government partners like ODHS or the Yamhill County. And then we've got 7 private or community-based grants, philanthropic dollars, if you will. These partnerships bring additional resources, innovation, and support to our district, and they're enhancing what we can provide beyond the general fund dollars. Those things can be anything from our mental health support to our bar program at the secondary level to our core funding for Title I services, ELD services, well-rounded education. So there's a myriad of different grants. I would say the only technical competitive grant we have is the summer learning grant that we were just awarded. The rest of the grants, like the private grants and the government partners, they're competitive, but nobody's writing the same grant narrative we are, right? So I hesitate to say that they're competitive because we're not necessarily all going for the same thing, but there is a limited amount of funds and a board chooses who gets them. So I'd say those government partners and the private community grants in some nature are competitive. They're not necessarily funds that we'll get every year, and we have to reapply for those each year. Are there questions about grants?
Just a logistical comment is if we could get this last slide added to our copy and then getting the whole presentation put up for our community, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so just to bounce back, what do you guys do if the local option passes? So I wanted to touch on that before we closed here. So what would change, and this is in your slides too, is the general fund revenues is not going to change, are not going to change. We're adding a new fund number 120, which is where we're going to have the activities of the local option. However, it's all going to be considered the general fund. So the Department of Revenue and our program budgeting and accounting manual identify local option as general funds because we get to choose how we spend those. So what'll happen is when we do the appropriation change, we're going to adjust appropriations within Fund 100 to align with the relief of expenses, but also the restoration of expenses as well. So that's going to change the instruction level and support level of the Fund 100. We're going to have show the transfer of 100,000 is going to be added, which is the establishment of that stability fund. And then we're going to move some budget into unappropriated. So that'll be adding to the fund balance. So we wanted to display that as a change. Then in Fund 120, which is the new local option fund, we'll show that that's a typo there. The 4.8 million on the instruction level because we're only funding teachers, which is under the 1,000 level. And then we're leaving that 1.3 million as unappropriated because we need that to carry forward for our getting out of the local option plan. So what's going to show, as you can see in the bottom right there, is that our total general fund is going to go up $6.1 million in total. So that's kind of the mechanics of that. And then there'll be a new fund, which is the stability fund, which we've tagged as Fund 227 as a special revenue fund that's going to start out next year with $100,000 being transferred into it. So, and then the expense side, it's going to be unappropriated because we're not going to spend that money. It's going to be spent at a future time. So that's going to be added. So that's what I want to share on that piece. And then, I may as well say this part since I got the mic. So with the change in the budget calendar, if the levy does pass, we would convene a budget committee meeting on May 26th just to revise the approval. Or if it doesn't pass, that will remain a budget hearing, and we'll just let you know that the budget committee piece is either canceled or you're at your option. There won't be any action that's going to happen. And then the board will receive the approved budget and decide whether or not to approve that budget. If it does pass, then we'll have another meeting on the 9th that the board will receive your revised approval and then decide whether to adopt that at the June 9th meeting.
Thank you, Nate. So I guess that kind of brings us to, if we need any additional information on this budget that we have. And then if there's any additional questions that we have. So the goal would be we need to decide if we are going to approve the budget that we have or if we need to, kind of add in an additional meeting to be able to get more information, to be able to be comfortable to pass the budget. And then we make that decision, if the levy passes or doesn't, then that will change that meeting to now it's a hearing versus now we're going to look at a revised budget. So that's kind of where we're at.
So one of the things that comes to mind is that we've had, thank you for the generous amount of time you gave us to review the budget in between your presentation and tonight. And we had an opportunity to ask additional questions. So I guess just looking for a head nod from folks. I'm not asking anyone to vote right now, but getting a head nod and a sense from the room We've had an opportunity to ask our questions. We've gotten excellent explanations. We've had staff come and share their expertise with us. And I'm just wondering if, as a committee as a whole, do we feel that it's time for an approval for the, what we know we have for resources next year and a plan to implement that? So in other words, asking the budget committee to approve the proposed budget and then setting our tax levies that we need to do. So that's wanting to get a sense. Is that where everyone's ready to go tonight?
That makes sense. I have one quick question. I can't remember the last couple of years because it's always a firestorm. So you have a proposed budget, but like showing about $1 million, the ending fund balance and starting school fund balance next year, or the beginning fund balance, right? But last meeting, you said it was about 700,000, maybe even go a little lower than that. So do we need a new updated budget to say what our ending fund balance is? And I may be looking more towards Kim and Claire about, is that, do we need that particular in it or not?
I would say no,
Okay.
and the reason why is the CFO and the superintendent both are aware of the difference in those numbers, and that by the end of June of 27, that they have to have that worked through. So we're getting to the point where we have looked at a proposed budget. We're about ready to approve. It's only a plan. It's not what's going to happen. The first kid that walks in the door is going to change the plan, right? So just recognizing there's always things that change after that approval, and then the board takes the next step and does the adoption and makes the appropriations and levies the taxes. So, and all those things, what I can tell you, I have never seen a budget match the ending numbers. Never.
And that's why I couldn't remember. So thank you on that.
I think you bring up a good point, though, that we do recognize that even after this budget, we may have to do work because of where our ending fund balance is and where our plan was. So we're already talking about that. Like there may be more cuts, more reductions that we have to make depending upon where we end. So that's a conversation that's already happening.
We talked about the governor's executive order earlier. Do we anticipate getting any information between now and what would be our next budget meeting that would change what we might approve tonight? Does my question make sense?
I don't think so. It's a rapidly evolving thing, but I'm actually not anticipating I'm going to get rules between now and the 26th.
And we've already added a day back for next year, so that's in the right direction. So.
Just looking at my work email at the end of the day, which I haven't looked through yet, there is a thing from ODE about the executive order, and that there's a FAQ and there are some informational webinars coming up May 8th through the 13th.
Just one quick question I have, because I guess I didn't ask it before, is with the budget that we have, are there any like curriculum changes that we're pushing out in order to meet this budget, or any like tech replacements or things that we've decided to kind of push that, rock a little farther out in order to make these numbers work?
So we're in a good position on that front where we're coming off of a bond where we had some residual dollars that included interest earnings. And some of the things I've identified that match the language of the that was included in that bond was some improvements to curriculum and some technology purchases as well. So we're leveraging other funds to keep on track with the needed changes in curriculum and technology.
I would also say that yes, we're pushing out. We were planning to start building curriculum back into the general fund earlier that we're not doing because of we're reducing. So I would say absolutely that comment about the EST, the transit funds and starting to use those for a bigger portion, a better purpose. We're using them now to fund general fund. And that's, yes, we're absolutely having to delay. And again, for us to get back to a stable financial footing, we need to have an amount of curriculum in the general fund. We need to have these things set out. We're definitely pushing those things off.
Oh, wait. So I get two different messages from you. Nate saying we are getting the curriculum that we need,
Yeah.
but we're not using the general funds.
Right.
But you're saying that we're pushing off the general fund, but we're still not pushing off the curriculum adoption or whatever we
Correct.
need to buy. We're still buying it on our, what I was mentioning earlier, every
Yeah.
7 to whatever years, right?
Yeah. What I would say is that bond interest money is going to run out. It's
Yeah.
one-time money, and
Sure.
this is a yearly charge. And so eventually to be sustainable, we have to get it into general fund where we have this expense in our budget. Right now, we're buying it off of interest,
I see what you're saying.
which many districts do. That's not abnormal. It's just that, again, for us to have kind of a stable financial future, it has to get built into the budget that's repeatable.
It's an example of a plan that's changed. So we developed the plan to have increased responsibility for the general fund for it, but now we've had to back off of that. But the goals of it are still there. It's just it's going to deplete those one-time funds faster. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the committee? Then I would move to approve the proposed budget as presented.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right. So
Just,
yeah. Go ahead.
I kind of said this in the question, but just to make it more of a statement, I'm great with approving the budget and would encourage the district to make all cut decisions with an equal thing across the whole district, not have cuts come at the expense of certain programs or populations.
Okay. Anything else? All right. So we're gonna have call for the question. And I think Claire, should we go? We'll just go one by one.
So
Oh,
if
okay.
it's unanimous, it depends on.
Okay.
If it's not unanimous, then we'll go one by one.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then I also need a vote from Dawn,
Aye.
from Megan.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, congratulations, our budget has passed.
Well, with that, I move to approve the permanent tax rate at the rate of 4.6616 per thousand for the 26-27 fiscal year.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Dawn,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
all those opposed? Anyone abstaining? Congratulations, it carries.
And one more, move to approve the levy of ad valorem taxes for debt service in the amount of $7 million.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Dawn,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
opposed? Anyone abstaining? Congratulations, Motion carries.
Good job, everybody.
Good job.
And thanks to the folks online for coming.
Before, so before we close, you need to talk about how we're going to, if that levy passes, our optional meeting, right? So how are we gonna get communicated about that too? I just noticed that that optional meeting that's supposed to happen on the 26th actually is the same night as a board meeting. And so we need to address that next week as a board meeting, how we're gonna handle that, right? So just make sure everybody's aware that that's gonna be the same night for the board members no matter what.
Mm.
And we won't be here.
Yeah,
For the board meeting.
are we supposed to be somewhere else for that one?
We're supposed to
Maybe
be
at
at
Austin.
Joanne Austin.
Maybe we switch that. We'll
Probably
work
wanna-
on that.
I know that it's in the newsletter for the school, so probably sooner than later, so that
Yeah,
people attending with.
I think we're meeting on Thursday for board leadership, so let's sit down and we'll talk about
Okay.
that.
And then for this general audience, this committee, how are we gonna be notified? I mean, is there gonna be an official notice from you or from Kim to say we're holding the 26th meeting?
So we have to notice the meeting either way. So what'll happen is probably that Friday after the vote, if it's decisive, I'll send you guys an update. So you all
Okay.
have the same message.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about what that looks like on the 26th if it passes. Like hopefully it's not a lot of long drawn out thing, you know, because we've kind of shown you what that looks like and we kept it simple. So Lord willing, it's quick.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next thing that we have on the calendar then would be May 26th. For if it is a budget hearing at that point, the budget committee is invited to attend, be here, like, or we're gonna switch it and, you know, look at a revised budget. So yes, I appreciate all of your guys's time and effort that you put into this. It is very important task that we've had as a community and as board members to kind of come together and come up with numbers. So, you know, appreciate all the help and effort that's been done by staff and by all of you guys. So thank you very much. We should be very proud of what we've done today. So thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership. All right, call the meeting to close. Thank you, guys.